The great crystal hall on Zephyria Prime gleamed under three purple suns. Ambassador Thex-9 walked across the smooth floor, his forearms holding data tablets while his tail swished behind him. The monthly meeting of the Galactic Council was about to begin, and today he had something amusing to share. The hall filled with representatives from across the galaxy. The Vorthak arrived first, their crystal bodies catching light and throwing rainbow patterns on the walls. They moved slowly, each step making soft chiming sounds. Behind them came the Nebulari, floating clouds of gas that spoke in musical tones. The Makani entered last, their metal bodies clicking and whirring as they took their assigned seats. Council Prime Vex Alpha raised her crystal arm. The room grew quiet. Her body flashed blue, which meant the meeting could start. "Today we review new species," she announced. Her voice echoed through the chamber like wind chimes. "Ambassador Thex-9 will present his findings." Thex-9 stood up. His reptilian face showed what passed for a smile among his people. "Honored Council, I bring news of a species that will entertain you greatly." He activated his first tablet. A hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed a small blue planet spinning slowly. Yellow letters appeared below it. Sol System, Planet 3, Species Human. "These creatures call their world Earth," Thex-9 continued. "They are young, perhaps 50,000 years since they developed tools. They have not yet achieved faster-than-light travel. They still fight wars with metal projectiles and explosive devices." A few council members made sounds that meant boredom. The Makani delegates' optical sensors dimmed. This sounded like every other primitive species report, but Thex-9's smile grew wider. "However, they have something unique, something that makes them different from other primitive species." He activated another tablet. New holograms filled the air. Images of human art, books and ancient carvings floated around the council chamber. "They worship beings they call gods," Thex-9 explained. "But these are not ordinary gods. Listen to what these humans believe their gods can do." He read from his notes. "Zeus throws lightning bolts that can destroy mountains. Thor wields a hammer that controls thunder and can level entire armies. Prometheus stole fire from the gods themselves and gave it to humans." Soft laughter rippled through the chamber. The Nebulari made wind-like sounds of amusement. Even the serious Makani clicked in what seemed like mechanical chuckles. "There is more," Thex-9 said. "They tell stories of humans who gained godlike powers. Hercules lifted the sky itself. Achilles was nearly immortal in battle. David killed a giant with a small stone. Jesus came back from death." The laughter grew louder. Council Prime Vex Alpha's body flashed bright yellow, which showed great amusement among her people. "You mean," called out Delegate Zor from the Makani section, "they actually believe these stories?" "Not exactly," Thex-9 replied. "They call them myths and legends. They say the stories are not real, but they keep telling them. Every human child learns these tales. They make movies about them. They write new versions constantly." He showed more images. Humans in theaters watching stories about flying men in capes. Children dressed as characters with magic powers. Adults reading books about wizards and warriors. They seem obsessed with beings who have powers they know they do not possess, Thex-9 observed. They dream constantly of strength beyond their biology. Yet they remain weak. Soft creatures with no natural weapons or special abilities. Delegate Vorth, whose crystal body was ancient and wise, spoke up. "Perhaps they hope to become these powerful beings someday." "Impossible," said Delegate Kex of the Nebulari. "We have studied their biology. They are made of simple carbon-based matter. No energy manipulation abilities, no natural armor or weapons. They cannot even survive in space without artificial protection." Thex-9 nodded. "Exactly. They are physically weak, mentally limited to linear thinking and technologically primitive. Yet they fill their culture with dreams of cosmic power." More holograms appeared. Ancient human cave paintings showing figures with bright auras. Medieval art depicting saints performing miracles. Modern comic books with heroes flying through space. The pattern continues throughout their entire history, Thex-9 explained. From their earliest records to their current entertainment, they imagine beings with abilities that violate known physics. Telepathy, matter manipulation, faster-than-light movement, energy projection, immortality. "How sad," said Delegate Nyx, her gaseous form swirling with colors of pity. "They comfort themselves with impossible fantasies." "It gets stranger," Thex-9 continued. "They often make these powerful beings look exactly like ordinary humans. Their gods and heroes usually have human appearance just with added abilities. as if they believe ordinary humans could somehow become cosmic forces. The chamber erupted in louder laughter. The idea seemed ridiculous to species who had evolved actual abilities over millions of years. The Vorthak could manipulate light and crystal. The Nebulari existed as pure energy. The Makani had transcended biological limitations entirely. Council Prime Vex Alpha raised her arm for quiet. What is your recommendation, Ambassador Thex 9? I suggest we classify them as mythologically delusional primitives, he said formally. They show no immediate threat to galactic civilization. Their technology is centuries behind our weakest member species. Their delusions about power may actually prevent them from developing dangerous ambitions. He paused and looked around the chamber. However, their persistent mythology suggests they might be suitable for eventual uplift. Once they abandon these fantasies and accept reality, they could join galactic civilization as a client species. I recommend review in 500 standard cycles. The delegates discussed this among themselves. Soft chiming from the Vorthak, musical tones from the Nebulari, and electronic clicks from the Makani filled the air. Finally, Council Prime Vex Alpha called for a vote. All in favor of classifying species human as mythologically delusional primitives, with review for possible uplift in 500 cycles? Crystal arms, energy tendrils, and mechanical appendages raised throughout the chamber. The vote was unanimous. Motion carried. Vex Alpha announced. Ambassador Thex 9, file your report with the archive. Place a standard monitoring beacon in their system, but no contact for now. As the meeting moved to other business, delegates continued to chuckle about the amusing humans and their impossible stories. The idea that such weak, primitive creatures could ever possess the powers they dreamed about was simply too funny to take seriously. In the back of the chamber, Archivist Prime Zeth made careful notes. The elderly Vorthak had served the Council for over 1,000 years and had seen many species rise and fall. Something about the human mythology bothered him, though he could not say what. Later, alone in the archive chambers, he pulled up records of extinct civilizations. Many had left behind stories of powerful beings. Most were clearly religious in nature, created to explain natural phenomena their science could not understand. But the human stories were different. They were too detailed, too consistent across their entire planet, and they all seemed to describe the same types of abilities told in the same kinds of ways. Zeth made a private note in his personal files. Monitor human development carefully. Their mythology may indicate something we do not yet understand. Then he sealed the note and returned to his regular duties. After all, he was probably just being an overcautious old archivist. The Council had made their decision, and humans were clearly just primitive dreamers. What could possibly be dangerous about creatures who told impossible stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things? 3 galactic months passed quietly after the Council meeting. The humans continued their small lives on their blue planet, unaware that aliens had discussed them and found them amusing. Everything seemed normal in the galaxy. Then the sensors on border station Epsilon 7 started screaming. Lieutenant Kresh was drinking his morning nutrient paste when every alarm in the station began blaring at once. He rushed to the command center, his metal boots clanging against the floor plates. Report, he shouted over the noise. Sensor operator Vex pointed at her display with a shaking crystal finger. Sir, we have an unknown vessel approaching at impossible speeds. Define impossible, Kresh ordered. The readings keep changing, sir. One moment it shows standard metal construction moving at sublight speeds. The next moment it registers as pure energy traveling faster than our best ships. Sometimes it appears to not exist at all. Kresh looked at the main screen. A blip moved steadily toward their position, but the numbers next to it kept changing. Speed readings jumped from normal to fantastic and back again. Energy signatures fluctuated wildly. Could be sensor malfunction, suggested Communications Officer Nix. Check all systems, Kresh ordered. They ran full diagnostics. Everything worked perfectly. The impossible readings continued. Sir, Vex called out. The vessel is slowing down. It will reach us in 6 hours at current speed. Kresh activated the emergency communications array. Border Station Epsilon 7 to Galactic Council Command. We have a code yellow situation. Unknown vessel approaching with impossible sensor readings. The reply came quickly. Admiral Zorth's mechanical voice crackled through the speakers. Describe impossible, Lieutenant. Kresh explained the fluctuating readings. He sent the sensor data to command. For several minutes, silence filled the comm channel. Lieutenant, Admiral Zorth finally said, I want you to listen carefully. Our best scientists cannot explain your readings. The vessel appears to be phasing in and out of normal spacetime. This should not be possible with any known technology. Orders, sir? Standard first contact protocol. Wait until the vessel arrives. Attempt communication. If they prove hostile, 3 Council dreadnoughts are moving to support you. The next 6 hours passed slowly. The crew watched their sensors as the mystery ship approached. The readings continued to change, but one thing became consistent. The vessel was huge. Sir, Vex reported. Latest size estimate shows a ship approximately 5 kilometers long. Kresh rubbed his scaled forehead. Ships that large required enormous amounts of energy and resources. Only the most advanced Council species could build such vessels. Any response to our hail attempts? Negative, sir. They do not respond on any standard frequency. At exactly 1400 hours station time, the mystery vessel dropped out of faster-than-light travel. It appeared on visual scanners as a massive ship unlike anything in Council records. The hull looked like ordinary metal, but energy patterns danced across its surface like lightning. Then the impossible happened. The ship simply appeared inside the station's defensive perimeter, bypassing all their shields and sensors. How did they do that? Vex whispered. Before anyone could answer, their communications board lit up. A signal came through on an old emergency frequency. Border Station Epsilon 7, this is the vessel Argo. We request permission to speak with Council leadership. Kresh activated the response channel. Unknown vessel Argo, you have violated Council space without authorization. Identify yourselves immediately. We are from the Sol system. We understand the Council recently discussed our species. We would like to respond to your evaluation. Kresh felt his blood chill. The Sol system. That meant these were humans. But humans were primitive. They had no faster-than-light travel. They certainly could not build ships like the one sitting outside his station. Argo, please explain how your species acquired this technology. We built it ourselves. May we speak with the Council? Kresh muted his microphone and turned to his crew. Contact Admiral Zorth immediately. Tell him the primitives from Sol system are here in a ship that violates physics. Minutes later, Admiral Zorth's fleet arrived. 3 massive dreadnoughts dropped out of hyperspace, their weapons powered and ready. Each ship was 2 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to destroy small planets. The human ship made no aggressive moves. It simply waited. Admiral Zorth's voice filled the comm channel. Human vessel, you will prepare to be boarded for inspection. Power down all weapons and surrender your technology for examination. The response came from a female human voice, calm and patient. Admiral Zorth, we carry no weapons as you understand them. We came only to talk. May we request formal audience with the full Council? You will submit to boarding now. Resistance will result in your destruction. Kresh watched his sensors as the Admiral's ships moved closer to the human vessel. The Argo remained motionless, showing no signs of defensive preparations. Admiral, the human voice said, we do not wish conflict. We ask only for the same courtesy the Council shows all species seeking peaceful contact. You are primitives who somehow stole advanced technology. You have no right to request anything. There was a pause. When the human spoke again, something had changed in her voice. A note of sadness mixed with what sounded like disappointment. We had hoped for better. She said quietly, very well. We will comply with your boarding procedures. But Admiral, we recommend you approach carefully. Are you threatening us? No, Admiral. We are trying to protect you. The lead dreadnought moved within docking range of the Argo. Kresh watched the operation through his cameras. Council Marines in full battle armor began boarding procedures. Everything seemed normal for the first few minutes. Then the reports started coming in. Admiral, came the voice of the Marine commander. We have a problem. This ship appears to be bigger inside than outside. Explain. Sir, we have been walking down the same corridor for 10 minutes. It should have ended 5 minutes ago based on the ship's external dimensions. Kresh looked at his sensors. The human ship still measured 5 kilometers long, but somehow the Marines had walked more than 7 kilometers inside it. Additionally, sir, the Marine continued, we are detecting only one life sign aboard. A single human female in what appears to be a simple chamber at the center of the vessel. One person is operating a 5-kilometer ship. Unknown, sir. We are approaching her location now. More time passed. Finally, the Marines reached the central chamber. Their video feed showed a simple room with basic furniture. A human woman sat at a wooden table, drinking something from a plain cup. She looked exactly like the humans in Council files. Soft skin, no natural weapons. Physically unremarkable. "Ma'am," said the Marine commander, "you will come with us for questioning." The woman looked up at him with dark eyes. "Captain Sarah Chen," she said calmly. "I was wondering when you would arrive. Please sit down. We have much to discuss." She gestured to chairs that had not been there moments before. "Admiral Zorth," Captain Chen said, looking directly at the camera, "I believe your council wishes to understand how primitive humans acquired this technology. I would be happy to explain, but I suggest we do this properly, in front of the full council assembly." Her voice carried through the communication channel to all three ships in the border station. Despite her small size and ordinary appearance, something about her presence made every alien listener feel suddenly uncertain. "What guarantee do we have of your peaceful intentions?" Admiral Zorth asked. Captain Chen smiled sadly. "Admiral, if we meant harm, you would already know it. We are here because we heard your council found our mythology amusing. We thought it was time to show you why we tell those stories." She stood up from her chair. For just a moment, the air around her seemed to shimmer. "Shall we proceed to the council chambers? I believe they are expecting us." The Grand Assembly Hall had never been so full. Word of the mysterious human ship had spread throughout council space. Representatives from hundreds of species filled every seat, while millions more watched through video feeds across the galaxy. Captain Sarah Chen walked calmly down the center aisle. She wore simple clothes, dark pants, a plain shirt, and soft shoes that made no sound on the crystal floor. In her hand, she carried a wooden staff that looked like it had been carved from an ordinary earth tree. Council security had scanned the staff dozens of times. It showed a simple wood with no metal, no energy sources, no hidden technology, just a stick. Ambassador Thex 9 watched from his seat with growing confusion. This was supposed to be a primitive human, but something about her felt wrong. She moved too smoothly, too confidently, and her eyes seemed to take in everything at once, as if she could see the entire massive chamber without turning her head. Council Prime Vex Alpha's crystal body flashed the formal greeting pattern. "Captain Chen of the human species, you have requested audience with this council. State your purpose." Chen stopped in the center of the chamber and planted her wooden staff on the floor. The simple gesture somehow commanded attention from every being in the room. "Honored council," she began, her voice carrying clearly to every corner without amplification. 3 months ago you evaluated my species. You found our cultural stories amusing. You classified us as mythologically delusional primitives. Nervous sounds rippled through the assembly. The laughter that had filled this same chamber months ago felt very far away now. Your representative found it entertaining that we tell stories of gods who throw lightning, heroes who move mountains, and ordinary humans who gain cosmic powers. Chen's voice remained calm, but something in her tone made the massive chamber feel suddenly smaller. "We do not dispute your evaluation of our technology," she continued. "By your standards, we are indeed primitive. We have no great space fleets, no planet-destroying weapons, no devices that can reshape matter." She began walking slowly around the center of the chamber. "But you made one critical error in your assessment. You assumed that technology and power are the same thing." Delegate Kex of the Nebulari spoke up, his gaseous form swirling with confusion. "Are you claiming they are not? Power requires tools, energy sources, weapons." Chen stopped and looked directly at him. For a moment, her ordinary human eyes seemed to hold depths that made the ancient Nebulari feel very young. "Tell me, Delegate Kex, what tools does gravity require?" The question hung in the air. Kex's energy patterns flickered uncertainly. "Gravity is a fundamental force," he replied. "It requires no tools because it simply exists." "Exactly," Chen said with a smile. "Now what if I told you that human mythology is not fantasy but instruction?" She raised her wooden staff. The simple motion should have meant nothing, but every being in the chamber suddenly felt the air grow thick and heavy. "You found our stories of Zeus throwing lightning amusing," Chen said. Her voice had not changed, but now it seemed to echo from everywhere at once. "Let me show you why we tell that story." The wooden staff began to glow, not with artificial light, but with something that made every sensor in the chamber register impossible readings. Lightning began to dance around Chen's body, but not the crude electrical discharges that most species knew. This was something deeper. Energy that seemed to bend reality itself. Council Prime Vex Alpha's crystal body flashed urgent warning patterns. "Security! Contain the threat." But the security forces found they could not move. Not because Chen had done anything to them, but because their bodies refused to approach her. Every survival instinct they possessed screamed danger. "I am not threatening anyone," Chen said calmly. The lightning continued to flow around her like living creatures. "I am simply being myself." She struck the crystal floor with her staff. The sound rang out like thunder, but the crystal did not break. Instead, it sang. Every crystal surface in the chamber began resonating in harmony, creating music that no technology could produce. "You see," Chen explained as reality bent around her. "Humans do not build devices to manipulate energy. We are energy. We do not create tools to move matter. We are matter. We do not make weapons to project force. We are force." The staff in her hands began changing shape. It flowed like liquid wood, becoming something that looked exactly like the weapons from human mythology. Not a copy or imitation, but the actual thing their stories described. "The stories you mocked are instruction manuals," Chen continued. Her form seemed larger now, though she had not physically grown. "Passed down through generations, teaching us what we are capable of when we stop limiting ourselves." She gestured toward the great viewing screen. Images appeared without any technology. Scenes of human history, but not the version the council had studied. Ancient humans moving stones that weighed thousands of tons. Medieval humans healing diseases with touch. Modern humans unconsciously bending probability to survive impossible situations. "Every species in this galaxy evolved naturally," Chen said. "You developed technology to supplement your abilities. But humans took a different path. We evolved to become living technology." The lightning around her body suddenly expanded, filling the entire chamber with gentle light. Every being present felt their fear dissolve, replaced by wonder. "Your mythology speaks of creators who shaped the universe," she said to the assembly. "Our mythology speaks of ordinary people learning to do the same thing. The difference is that our stories are true." Delegate Zor of the Makani managed to speak through his amazement. "Why do you hide this? Why pretend to be primitive?" Chen's expression grew sad. The lightning dimmed to a soft glow. "Because power without wisdom destroys everything it touches. We learned that lesson the hard way many times. So we built limitations into ourselves, cultural safeguards. We tell ourselves our abilities are just stories until we truly need them." She lowered her staff. The impossible energy slowly faded, but the chamber still sang with residual power. "We have watched your species grow and learn," she continued. "We have guided when we could, protected when necessary. Always in secret, always pretending to be less than we are." The assembly sat in stunned silence. The implications were staggering. If humans possessed these abilities, what else had the council misunderstood about the galaxy? "Why reveal yourselves now?" Council Prime Vex Alpha asked. Her crystal form had stopped flashing entirely, as if overwhelmed by what she had witnessed. Chen looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes or optical sensors of hundreds of different species. "Because something is coming that we cannot face alone. Something that requires all of us working together at our full potential." She raised the staff once more, and new images appeared in the air. Dark shapes moving between galaxies. Entities of pure entropy that consumed light, matter, and energy itself. "They have noticed the growth of intelligence in this galaxy," Chen said quietly. "They are coming to end it. And when they arrive, you will need humans fighting at full strength, not pretending to be primitive dreamers." The staff returned to simple wood. Chen became an ordinary human woman again, but no one in the chamber would ever see her that way again. "The council classified us as mythologically delusional primitives," she said with a small smile. "Perhaps it is time to reconsider that evaluation." The Grand Assembly Hall remained silent for a long moment. Then slowly every representative began to stand. It was not planned or coordinated. It was simply the only response that made sense when faced with the impossible. The age of humanity's hiding was over. The emergency session began 12 hours after Captain Chen's demonstration. Only the highest-ranking council members attended. Meeting in a secure chamber deep within Zephyria. Prime. The room had shields that could block any known form of surveillance or energy manipulation. They hoped it would be enough to contain what they were about to discuss. Council Prime Vex Alpha looked around the small circle of beings who led galactic civilization. Her crystal form flickered with stress patterns that had not been seen for centuries. "We need answers," she said simply. Captain Chen sat across from her, looking perfectly ordinary again. The wooden staff lay across her knees like a simple walking stick. But no one in the room could forget what they had witnessed in the Grand Assembly. "Ask your questions," Chen said calmly. Admiral Zorth leaned forward, his mechanical voice tight with disbelief. Our intelligence networks span the galaxy. How did we miss this completely? You saw what we wanted you to see, Chen replied. Humans are very good at hiding in plain sight. We have been doing it for a very long time. How long? Asked Archivist Prime Zeth. Chen considered the question carefully. Your species measures age in millions of years. We measure it differently. Let me put it in terms you can understand. We were already ancient when your oldest civilization was learning to make fire. The statement hit the chamber like a physical blow. The Vorthak had records going back 40 million years. The idea that humans were older than that seemed impossible. That cannot be accurate, said Science Director Plex. Your planet shows no signs of advanced civilization, older than a few thousand years, because we reset ourselves periodically, Chen explained. When we reach a certain level of technological development, we choose to forget it. We hide our knowledge, scatter our populations, and start over as primitives. Why? The question came from Delegate Nix, her gaseous form swirling with confusion. Chen stood up and walked to the chamber's viewing window. Outside, 3 purple suns illuminated the crystal landscape of Zephyria Prime. Power corrupts, she said quietly. Not just political power or technological power. Real power. The ability to reshape reality with a thought. We learned very early that species who discover their full potential too quickly destroy themselves and everything around them. She turned back to face the council leaders. We tried building utopias. They became stagnant and died. We tried expansion across the galaxy. We nearly consumed everything in our path. We tried isolation. We became disconnected from reality itself. So you chose voluntary limitation, Archivist Zeth said slowly. We built cultural safeguards into ourselves, Chen confirmed. We tell stories of impossible heroes so we remember what we can do, but we treat them as fantasy, so we do not abuse that power. Most humans live their entire lives never knowing what they truly are. Admiral Zorth's optical sensors focused intensely on her. Most humans? You mean some do know? A few, Chen admitted. Guardians who watch for threats that require our intervention. We have prevented 17 extinction-level events in this galaxy without your species ever knowing we were involved. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Council had always believed they were the protectors of galactic civilization. Learning that another species had been secretly defending them was humbling and terrifying. What kind of threats? Science Director Plex asked. Chen gestured, and images filled the air without any visible technology. The Council members saw things they had never imagined. Massive entities feeding on stellar energy, dimensional rifts that could tear apart spacetime, artificial intelligences that viewed all biological life as a disease to be cured. We have been gardeners, Chen explained, quietly tending the growth of intelligence throughout the galaxy, nudging species away from dead-end development paths, protecting them from threats they were not ready to face. Protecting us, Council Prime Vex Alpha said, her crystal body flashing with what might have been embarrassment or anger. Yes. The simple confirmation was somehow worse than any accusation could have been. Every council member had spent their careers believing they were advanced, powerful, and independent. Learning they had been under the protection of supposedly primitive humans was devastating. Why reveal yourselves now? Admiral Zorth demanded. Why break thousands of years of secrecy? Chen's expression grew grave. She gestured again, and new images appeared. Dark shapes moving between galaxies so large they distorted space-time around them. Because we face something we cannot handle alone, she said. The Devourers have noticed this galaxy. They are coming. What are Devourers? Science Director Plex asked. They are what happens when a species gains ultimate power and loses all wisdom, Chen explained. They exist only to consume. Energy, matter, life, thought itself. They move between galaxies, leaving nothing but empty void behind them. The images showed the aftermath of Devourer attacks. Entire star clusters reduced to empty space. Planets stripped not just of life but of atomic structure itself. How do you fight something like that? Delegate Nix whispered. You do not fight them, Chen said grimly. You survive them. And survival requires every species in this galaxy operating at their absolute maximum potential. She looked directly at each council member in turn. That includes humans fighting without limitations for the first time in millions of years. But it also includes all of your species discovering capabilities you have forgotten or never knew you possessed. What do you mean? Archivist Zeth asked. Do you think humans are the only species that chose voluntary limitation? Chen asked with a sad smile. Do you think we were the only ones wise enough to build safeguards into ourselves? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Slowly, understanding began to dawn on several faces. The Vorthak once manipulated space and time directly, Chen continued. The nebulary existed simultaneously across multiple dimensions. The Makani transcended the boundary between consciousness and reality itself. Science Director Plex's mechanical frame began vibrating with shock. That is impossible. Our records show no such abilities. Your records show what your species chose to remember, Chen replied. Just as human records show us as primitive beings who invented fire yesterday. The difference is that human myths preserve the truth. Your species chose to forget completely. She gestured one more time. New images appeared. Ancient Vorthak bending space-time to create pocket universes. Primordial nebulary existing as living concepts that shaped reality through thought. Early Makani who had become living bridges between the physical and digital realms. Every species in this galaxy once possessed abilities that your current science considers impossible, Chen said, and every species chose to limit themselves when they realized the dangers of unlimited power. How do we regain these abilities? Admiral Zorth asked quietly. The same way humans do, Chen replied, through cultural memory, carefully preserved and slowly awakened. Your mythology may seem different from ours, but it serves the same purpose. Council Prime Vex Alpha's crystal form flickered with rapid thought patterns. You are saying our religious stories, our ancient legends, our supposedly primitive beliefs, our instruction manuals, Chen finished. Just like ours. The chamber fell silent again as each leader contemplated the staggering implications. Everything they thought they knew about their species, their history, and their place in the galaxy was wrong. How long do we have? Archivist Zeth asked finally. Chen looked out the window again, toward the space between stars where something dark was already approaching. The Devourers will arrive in 6 of your standard years, she said quietly. We have that long to remember what we really are. She turned back to face them, her ordinary human appearance somehow containing infinite depths. The question is, are you ready to stop being safe, limited versions of yourselves and become what your ancestors once were? The future of the galaxy waited for their answer. 5 years and 11 months had passed since Captain Chen's revelation. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have imagined. On Vorthak Prime, crystal spires that had been simple buildings now existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The Vorthak had remembered their ability to manipulate space and time, guided by ancient songs they had once dismissed as religious nonsense. In the nebulary systems, entire planets existed as living thoughts made manifest. The gas beings had rediscovered their power to shape reality through pure consciousness, abilities recorded in what they had once called primitive creation myths. The Makani worlds hummed with impossible machinery that bridged the gap between digital and physical reality. Their ancestors' legends of living computers and conscious mathematics had proven to be technical manuals, and throughout the galaxy, humans worked openly for the first time in millions of years, no longer hiding behind the facade of primitive technology. They helped other species remember what they had forgotten. It was difficult work. Millions of years of voluntary limitation could not be overcome easily, but they were running out of time. Admiral Kresh stood on the bridge of the flagship Harmony, watching long-range sensors track the approaching darkness. The ship itself was impossible by old standards, a fusion of human energy manipulation, Vorthak space-time engineering, nebulary reality shaping, and Makani consciousness integration. Report, he commanded. Devourers will breach the galactic edge in 17 hours, announced sensor operator Vex. Her crystal form now existed partially outside normal space, allowing her to perceive things that regular sensors could not detect. Kresh nodded grimly. Despite 5 years of preparation, no one knew if they were ready. The Devourers were not ships or creatures that could be fought with weapons. They were entropy given form, the ultimate expression of power without wisdom. Signal all fleets, Kresh ordered. Operation Myth Becomes Reality begins now. Across the galaxy, the response was immediate. Human ships that looked like crystallized starlight took position at the galactic edge. Vorthak vessels that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously formed protective barriers around inhabited systems. Nebulary consciousness ships spread their awareness throughout space itself. Makani reality anchors prepared to hold the fundamental laws of physics in place. But the true defense was not technological. On Earth, Captain Sarah Chen stood in a simple field where she had grown up. Around her, 100 humans sat in meditation, They looked ordinary, these farmers and teachers and shopkeepers, but they were about to become what their ancestors had been, living gods who had chosen to be human. "Are you ready?" Chen asked softly. They opened their eyes. Each face showed the same expression, determination mixed with sadness. They were about to give up the limitations that had defined them for millions of years. There was no guarantee they would be able to impose those limits again when this was over. "We are ready," they said as one. On Vorthak Prime, archivist Zeth sang the song of creation that his people had preserved for 40 million years. Reality began to sing with him as space and time responded to the music. What had once been metaphor became literal truth. In the nebulary dimensions, Delegate Nyx released her individual form and became one with the cosmic consciousness her people had once been. Her thoughts spread across light years, touching the minds of every intelligent being in the galaxy. In the Makani systems, Science Director Plex opened the final barriers between consciousness and reality. The distinction between mind and matter dissolved as his people became living equations that held the universe together. And in the darkness between galaxies, the Devourers sensed the change. For the first time in eons, they encountered resistance that matched their own power. The battle was nothing like what the galaxy's inhabitants had expected. There were no explosions, no dramatic ship-to-ship combat, no heroic charges across space. Instead, reality itself became a battlefield. The Devourers attacked by simply being what they were, entropy incarnate. Their presence unraveled the fundamental forces that held matter together. Stars winked out not because they were destroyed, but because the concept of nuclear fusion ceased to exist near them. But they found the galaxy defended by something they had not encountered before. Intelligent life that had remembered how to be intelligent energy. Humans became living stars, their bodies channeling the same forces that powered suns. They stood in the path of entropy and refused to let it pass. Vorthak sang space itself into new configurations, creating maze-like dimensions where entropy could become lost and confused. Nebulari existed as pure thought that entropy could not touch, thinking new realities into existence faster than the Devourers could unmake them. Makani became the mathematical foundations of physics itself, holding the laws of nature steady against the chaos. The conflict lasted 7 hours and 17 minutes. To outside observers, nothing seemed to happen. Space remained dark and quiet. But in dimensions beyond normal perception, gods fought for the right of intelligence to exist. When it was over, the Devourers were gone. Not destroyed because such beings could not truly be destroyed, but convinced that this galaxy contained intelligent life that had learned wisdom along with power. They moved on to seek easier prey among species that had gained ultimate abilities without learning ultimate responsibility. In the aftermath, the galaxy's defenders faced their greatest challenge yet, returning to limitation. On Earth, Chen and her companions slowly pulled their expanded consciousness back into human form. Some would not be able to maintain the restrictions. They would have to leave normal space, becoming guardians who existed between dimensions. Was it worth it? Asked one of the humans who was losing his ability to return to limited form. Chen looked up at the stars where countless species were struggling with the same question. They had all remembered what they really were, touched the ultimate power that was their birthright. Going back to voluntary limitation after that was the hardest thing any intelligent being could do. But across the galaxy they were doing it anyway. Because they had learned what the Devourers never could, that true strength was not the power to do anything, but the wisdom to choose what not to do. Yes, Chen said quietly, it was worth it. The new Galactic Council met for the first time 6 months later. Every species was represented, but now they understood what they really were beneath their chosen limitations. Humans sat as equals among beings who remembered their own divinity. Council Prime Vex Alpha, her crystal form once again existing in only 3 dimensions, called the session to order. We gather to establish the new principles of galactic civilization, she announced. Never again will any species be classified as primitive based on their chosen limitations. Never again will we mistake voluntary restraint for weakness. The chamber filled with sounds of agreement from dozens of species, each of whom had rediscovered abilities that defied conventional understanding. The universe is vast, Vex Alpha continued, and there will always be threats that require us to remember what we really are. But we have learned that the greatest threat is not external danger, but the temptation to use unlimited power without unlimited wisdom. She looked across the assembly at Captain Chen, who sat quietly with her wooden staff across her knees. The humans taught us that mythology is not fantasy, but instruction, that limitation is not weakness but choice, that true civilization is not measured by what you can do, but by what you choose not to do. The new galactic motto was inscribed in the chamber that day, written in the languages of every member species. Power without wisdom destroys. Wisdom without power cannot protect. True strength is knowing when to be weak. And in the vast spaces between galaxies, other devourers sensed what had happened and chose different hunting grounds. They had learned to recognize the signature of intelligent life that had grown truly wise. Civilizations that told stories of gods and heroes, not because they dreamed of power, but because they remembered how to use it responsibly. The galaxy's children had grown up, and the universe was safer for it. Years later, young beings of all species would learn the same stories their ancestors had preserved. Tales of mighty heroes and cosmic forces, of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, of gods who chose to be mortal. And they would understand, as their elders now did, that these were not fantasies to escape into, but instructions for who they could become when the universe needed them most. The age of hidden power was over. The age of chosen limitation had begun, and somewhere on Earth, an ordinary human woman sat under the stars with a wooden staff, watching over a galaxy that had finally learned the difference between strength and wisdom.